Hello everybody, this is Jacob Alanzadegui, Senior Vice President with Medipure Products. I want to take just a few moments to discuss fat and organ damage today. So, as you probably are aware, as we get older, sometimes there can be changes that occur in the body, and unfortunately one of those changes that often occurs has to do with gaining weight. Of course, there's various factors to that taking place, such as lack of a good diet, lack of activity, being overstressed, as well as different emotional and mental factors that can all lead to weight gain. So I want to discuss today a little bit different locations of fat and how it affects our health. So first I want to discuss and outline what visceral fat is. The viscerals refer to the organs, and visceral fat is the fat that is surrounding the organs, play an important role, just like other fat does in our body, and is found obviously within the abdominal cavity. We then have subcutaneous fat, which is the fat that lies outside of the muscles. So you can think, for example, the abdominal area, fat that might be, for example, between the skin and the muscle itself. Now, there's some typical assumptions when it comes to fat, and here you'll see two different images. And when we think of a person that's overweight or obese, we think of the paunch, for example, that's occurring over here, or the love handles, or maybe side fat that's kind of hanging out. And we typically attribute that to there being an over excess of subcutaneous fat, or the fat that lies over the muscle area. And while for sure that's there can be quite an accumulation of fat there, that isn't really the true culprit. So then the question is, who is the real culprit? And the answer is actually it's excess visceral fat. So here we can see an image where we have the subcutaneous fat. As I mentioned, it lies outside of the abdominal cavity, so beyond the muscle tissue here in the front, and then behind the spine here. And then we have visceral fat right here, all in the middle, surrounding the organs. Now this, of course, is an image of somebody that appears to be obese or overweight. And over a period of time, this excess visceral fat can just begin to grow and grow and grow and really cause a lot of strain and stress on the organs. And we'll get into that in just a moment here. But just a couple of interesting things to note is that the abdominal area actually accounts on average for about 1.5 inches. Now it can be as high as 2.5 inches of fat. But when you really think about that fat layer, it pales in comparison really when we're looking at proportionally the fat that accumulates here in the middle of the body among the viscerals or organs. Another interesting thing to note is that excess carbs become visceral fat. So first and foremost, carbohydrates are good, but consuming them in excess, if we're not active, leads them to be converted into stored fat. And that fat happens to be stored right here in the viscerals. So then the question, so what? What's the danger? There's been a lot of information already shared out there in the public regarding excess fat and cardiovascular disease such as stroke and heart attack. Well, I want to discuss a little bit of a topic that most people don't know about, and the damage caused because of the excess of the visceral fat that occurs. So one of those being type 2 diabetes. Now, it's not a secret. A lot of people know that there's a direct association with being overweight and developing type 2 diabetes. Well, as many of you probably are aware, diabetes type 2 diabetes occurs because there's a faulty regulation of insulin. Now, the pancreas itself is the organ that is responsible for regulating insulin in the body. And there's a lot of studies being done, particularly in Europe, that's showing that when there is an excess of fat surrounding the pancreas, it actually keeps the pancreas or inhibits it from regulating insulin as it should. And so further studies being done out in Europe once again have shown that when they've been able to successfully remove excess pancreatic or visceral fat, so the fat surrounding the pancreas, type 2 diabetes has been reversed altogether. It's quite an incredible finding, and that I believe it speaks volumes in regards to the type of damage caused by excess visceral fat. In addition, you can also damage the additional organs. Now, if you can imagine, here we have the organs inside the abdominal cavity, and there's obviously a finite or a limited amount of space. Well, what happens is if the fat keeps accumulating, the organs begin to feel pressure. So you can imagine just the pressure being pushed on as if, for example, if you were to hold a balloon in your hands and begin to slowly put pressure on it, eventually that balloon is going to burst. Now, that's not to say that your organs are going to explode, but the fact of the matter remains, it causes the organs to get damaged. The cells damaged, there's inflammatory issues, chronic issues can occur, and even cancer can be developed because of the excess visceral fat there on the organs. Obviously, that also leads to organ failure. So the kidneys and the liver can fail because you think about it, you're consistently applying pressure there. The body is constantly trying to regenerate or revive those cells in that organ. But if there's always pressure taking place there, after a while, it's just too much stress, and the organ itself can stop functioning as it should. So then, well, what can be done to help? Some steps to help here include losing fat fast. This is especially true and especially important if you're a person that is a bit overweight or obese. Now, there's a common misconception that you can't lose weight fast, that is unhealthy for you. Well, that's true to an extent. It's true if you do it the wrong way. If you're doing fad type of diets where you're just avoiding carbohydrates altogether or starving yourself or avoiding proteins altogether, that's very, very, very bad for you. And in fact, oftentimes it has the adverse effect, because then once you start eating carbohydrates or proteins, which by the way have a very important function, but if you avoid that or starve yourself of those important elements and then eat them again, oftentimes you're going to end up gaining the weight right back, and the effects are just not going to be good. There are products and solutions out there that do help to target the excess visceral fat and burn it without actually damaging muscle tissue. So make sure you do your research, do some homework, but that definitely should be on your radar, because there might be some serious chronic issues not too far away if you've been having some weight issues for some time. So also, nutrition is key. Avoid the processed sugars. Make sure you eat good foods, whole grains, good carbohydrates, fruits and vegetables. Make sure you eat as healthy as possible. Avoid drugs. Now, obviously, if you're taking pharmaceutical drugs in order to be able to monitor and run your day-to-day activities, that's understandable. But if you can avoid pharmaceutical drugs, do it. Especially the ones that have to do with controlling cholesterol or mitigating or controlling blood pressure. At the end of the day, those solutions are just a Band-Aid and not getting at the root of the issue, and oftentimes have adverse effects such as organ damage anyway. Okay. Learn to manage your stress. There's been a ton of studies that associate stress with weight gain. Get active. That doesn't mean run a marathon tomorrow, but it does mean we can start walking 5 to 10 minutes or go to the mall and window shop. But basically get a little active so that you can burn some extra calories and burn some fat. So to recap here, some important points to remember is that excess visceral fat is a culprit. And the reason why is because it can help lead to type 2 diabetes and then damage the organs. So there's a lot of secondary effects that occur because of having excess visceral fat in the body. Some tips to help include losing fat quickly, but make sure you do it the right way. Nutrition is key. If possible, avoid drugs. Learn to manage your stress wisely. And then lastly, become more active. So thanks for your time today. If you have any questions at all regarding what was mentioned, please feel free to email me directly at jacob@metapureproducts.com. Thank you.